Hello, friends. Welcome to Science Talk. I am your host, Jim Massa. Okay, want to share with you this abstract here from an article that's been accepted for publication, and it's already undergone a full peer review, but typical it has to go through all the editing and so forth. So the article titled "Changes in Arctic Stratification and Mixed Layer Depth Cycle: A Modeling Analysis," and Robinson Hodor and et al. Are the numerous authors on this. So, what is going on here? Okay, let's take a look at the abstract. Climate change is especially strong in a region of the Arctic Ocean and will have an important impact on its thermohaline structure. We analyzed the results of a hindcast simulation of a new 3D ocean model of the Arctic and North Atlantic oceans for the period 1970 through 2019. So basically a 50-year period. We compared the time period of 1970 to 1999 with the time period 2010 to 2019. Now, I'm wondering if this is a typo here, because what happened to 2000 to 2009? Or should this have been from 2000 to 2019? So I think that might be a typo. The comparison showed that there is a decrease in stratification between the two periods over most of the shallow Arctic shelf seas and in the core of the transpolar ice drift. Freshwater inputs to the ocean surface decline. Inputs of momentum to the ocean increase, which can explain the decrease in stratification. Let me pause there for a moment. Inputs of momentum. That's just another way of saying water inflow through the Fram. Now, they looked at the North Atlantic side, but that would also include water in through the Bering Strait. So basically, we know that and I've done videos on this before, that the sphere drips, which is 1 million cubic meters per second flow, has increased. So water is flowing. P equals momentum equals mass times velocity. If you got more of it flowing in there, you got more momentum. So that's basically what they're talking about there. The comparison also showed that the mixed layer becomes deeper during winter in response to the weakened stratification owing to increased vertical mixing. The comparison of summer mixed layer depths between the two time periods follows a deepening pattern that is less evident. Regional exceptions include the Nansen Basin and the part of the Canadian Basin bordering the Canadian archipelago, i.e. towards the North American side, where the mixed layer shoals, that means it gets shallow. Trends of freshwater fluxes imply that the changes of haline stratification in these regions are also influenced by other processes. For example, horizontal advection of fresh water, increased mixing, changes in the underlying water masses. Runoff increase towards the Arctic Ocean can locally decrease but also increase salinity, and thus has an impact on stratification, which can be explained by coastal dynamics. Basically, Ekman upwelling, where you upwell pump water onto the shelf. The results emphasize the nonlinear nature of Arctic Ocean dynamics. So what's the plain language summary? We analyzed the results of an ocean model simulation for the Arctic and North Atlantic Oceans for the periods of 1970 to 2019. Our model is in line, that means in agreement, with the recent observed changes in the Arctic Ocean and allows, in contrast to the rather sparse observations, a detailed assessment of stratification changes. These changes will affect the Arctic ecosystem and also believed to affect large-scale ocean circulation. Translation: what gets thrown out into the North Atlantic? We show that major changes in upper ocean conditions are caused by changes in the freshwater supply, by sea ice and varying effect of the wind on regimes and now becoming ice-free. Basically, wind stress. Wind blows on the surface. That's imparts a stress to the water. We also study the effect of changes in river runoff into the Arctic Ocean. Our study shows that an increase in river runoff can change the coastal circulation and results, paradoxically, in regions of higher salinity. These results point to the importance of modeling tools when it comes to better understanding of ocean processes in a changing climate. Okay, so let's break this down a little bit. Kind of explain what's going on and start thinking back to all the videos I've done before examining basically the oceanography of the Arctic Ocean. And keep in mind what? We're losing the sea ice, so you're not going to have, when the sea ice melts, at the freshwater input. That's going away. What's going to change now is, of course, what is the riverine input? Will that decrease, increase, whatever? So that's kind of a bit of an unknown. But if you're losing the sea ice melting because there's no ice to melt or greatly reduced, that's going to lessen the freshwater input, which means that instead of having a shallow stratification, a shallow halocline, that's not going to be necessarily present at shallow depths. So you have that going on. You have the inflow of warm, salty water in from the Fram Strait, in from the Bering Strait. Okay? So that, is a reference to, let's see, where was it? Show mixed layers become deeper during winter in response to the weakened stratification owing to increased vertical mixing. So you have this warmer, more dense water coming in, but the salinity of the surface waters, because there's no ice there to dilute, is also increasing. So the gradient is not going to be as sharply pronounced. That's going to lend itself to increase vertical mixing down to wherever the halocline may form. Now, if you recall, when I discussed the Rebecca Woodgate's research, she also found a change in the halocline. And the change was, overall, but also by season. What it did in the winter, what it did in the summer. And she showed that it did deepen in the winter and moved up a bit in the summertime. So basically, a lot of what they're saying here is an affirmation of a lot of the previous studies I have shared with you. I want to look at this statement here. Trends of freshwater fluxes imply that the changes of haline stratification are also influenced by other processes, horizontal advection of fresh water. Okay, this is a reference to what is the Arctic Dipole doing. Recall the Arctic Dipole, you got the high and the low pressure system. They're positioning, because again, they impart a wind stress to the surface of the water there. Their positioning will influence how not just sea ice moves around the Arctic, but fresh water, if you have whatever ice may be present in melting, or the riverine input. So depending on the positioning, is the material contained within the Arctic Ocean, or is it pushed out the Fram Strait? And that basically was the reference in the plain language summary of affecting global circulation. So they talk about increased mixing. I just alluded to that. Changes in the underlying water masses, right? We have this warmer intermediate water moving in. Runoff increase towards the Arctic Ocean can locally decrease. Okay, that's basically a reduction in riverine input. And if you have a decrease in riverine input, that's a decrease in fresh water, which means that the salinity will increase. That makes perfect sense. That's kind of basic, oceanography 101, I hate to say, but it still, needs to be said. And that, of course, will have the impact of stratification. So what they're basically saying, without actually saying it, is that the Arctic Ocean is getting Atlantified. That's what they're saying here. It's getting Atlantified, right? A lot of the statements here are aspects I have discussed with you in detail when I featured other research that has been done, and plus drawing on my own experience. And so basically, this is, scientists doing independent research and basically arriving at similar conclusions as to what's happening. And in this case here, we're looking at basically the physical dynamics of the Arctic Ocean. So losing the sea ice, riverine input may be decreasing. That leads to an increase in stratification of the upper surface layers. That leads to a decreased gradient in salinity. So that will enhance mixing to a point. And then you have the intermediate waters moving in. And this all works to push the halocline deeper, especially in winter, such that you may, instead of seeing a transition at about, say, 30 parts per thousand for the salinity, it may be around 32 parts per thousand, deeper down. But this all tells us how the Arctic Ocean in general is being Atlantified. So I just wanted to share with you this brief little headline, if you will. But it again goes to how drastically the Arctic is changing. And we all know what happens in the Arctic does not stay in the Arctic. We'll talk soon. Hello, folks. This is Jim here with Science Talk, asking you to please subscribe to my channel and to inform others of my channel and of the work that I do. Please share to social media platforms that you use. Also, as a reminder, don't forget to click the bell so that you know when I load up more videos. Finally, I ask that you support the work that I do by becoming a patron at patreon.com. Details in the description box below. Thank you for your support.